been dropped recently, and I think the execution of the search warrant is really what's bringing so much attention to it, because we're no longer talking about civil allegations. Now we're talking about a criminal investigation, which is a completely different ballpark.
Bernarda mentioned those civil lawsuits, and there's been a handful. We first reported one in November of last year when Diddy's ex-girlfriend Cassandra Ventura filed suit against him. You probably know her as the singer Cassie. So Cassie filed this lawsuit under New York's Adult Survivors Act. That act meant that between November 2022 and November 2023, sexual assault survivors could file civil suits against their alleged predators, regardless of whether the statute of limitations had passed. Cassie's lawsuit dropped several major bombshells, including her claims that Diddy beat her, that he raped her, and also forced her to have sex with prostitutes while recording it on video. Cassie's lawsuit also alleged that Diddy made her carry a gun, which is a theme we saw in a different civil suit, which we'll get to soon. But first, back to Cassie, who settled with Diddy outside of court just one day after the lawsuit was filed. Also in November of last year, accuser Joy Dickerson-Neal filed a civil suit against Diddy in Manhattan Supreme Court. Now, according to her lawsuit, Diddy videotaped an assault of Joy back in 1991 when she was a student at Syracuse University. Joy says Diddy drugged her, sexually assaulted her, and then passed around this videotape to other people in the music industry. At the time the lawsuit was filed, Diddy's rep called it a money grab. Things were calm for a few months until February of this year, when Rodney Jones, known as Lil Rod, filed a lengthy civil suit against Diddy and several others, accusing the singer of sexual assault and dropping some major bombshells.
That entire filing was just gasp-worthy.
That was former prosecutor Melba Pearson, who broke down the filing with us just this week. The suit name-dropped several celebrities, from Jennifer Lopez and Prince Harry to Cuba Gooding Jr., who Lil Rod accused of unwanted sexual touching while on Diddy's yacht.
I'm getting the feeling where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Because now we have two different instances where you're accused of the same type of behavior, years apart. I think there's something there. And I don't know that Cuba Gooding Jr. is going to escape from that one, because he already saw definitely people moving away from him within Hollywood circles and other circles once those first sexual assault allegations came out. So at this point, I don't think he's going to get away with it a second time.
As for J-Lo, the suit claimed that Diddy required her to carry an illegal gun that was used in a 1999 shooting at a New York nightclub. The fact that she's named as somebody who was carrying a weapon, could that be incriminating for Jennifer Lopez?
It can be, but with a huge caveat, right? If I'm not mistaken, that shooting did not result in a death. I know that somebody was harmed, but I don't believe anyone was killed. Because of that, you have the statute of limitations to deal with, which is basically a prolonged amount of a certain amount of time that a prosecutor has to be able to bring charges against someone. And it varies from state to state. But the one thing is consistent is that there is no statute of limitations on murder. So if P. Diddy had actually killed this person, or the person died as a result of their injuries, now J-Lo could be brought into the mix as a co-defendant because of the fact that the person has passed away. But if the person is alive and maybe they had serious injuries or whatever the case may be, statute of limitations would run, and it is highly likely at this juncture that statute of limitations have expired, therefore she does not have any criminal liability. But the reputational damage might be a different story, because now she's branding herself as something very different than who she was back then. Back then, she was very much Jenny from the block. She was, dating a variety of hip hop artists. She was very much in that world. Now she's married to Ben Affleck. She's trying to, portray herself in a different manner. So now her past is going to come back to haunt her. And we don't know what that's going to mean for her future in terms of movie deals, music deals, or anything like that. So I think for her, it might be more reputational damage than criminal liability.
The same can be said for Prince Harry, who was casually mentioned in the lawsuit. His name only comes up once, and it's almost an afterthought. The court doc reads, quote, Mr. Combs was known for throwing the best parties. Affiliation with and or sponsorship of Mr. Combs' sex trafficking parties garnered legitimacy and access to celebrities such as famous athletes, political figures, artists, musicians, and international dignitaries like British Royal Prince Harry. Why even name Prince Harry? There's no allegations against him or anything, but why bring him up?
I think it may have been a move to bring more credibility to the filing and say that, basically he being Diddy, was using his fame, fortune, and influence to insulate himself. So he was able to legitimize some of the activities he was doing by having these lavish parties, bringing all these A-list celebrities, but somewhere in a back room or somewhere in another wing, horrible things were happening. So the fact that Prince Harry was there does not necessarily mean he was participating in what was happening. And just because you were at a party doesn't mean you know what's happening in every inch of the house. I mean, if you think about it, if the party's being thrown in a mansion, there are various floors and wings. So it is completely possible that he was there and did not participate. Now, you had said Prince Andrew, especially as a result of the allegations that came out in connection with the Epstein case, that they were close and that they traveled together. And, there was a person that alleged that he had sexually assaulted her while she was underage. That would be a different story. But Prince Harry and the way that it was mentioned seemed to be very, again, just sort of trying to bring legitimacy and talk about these were the people that Diddy surrounded himself by to protect himself.
In this specific lawsuit, Lil Rod lists more than 10 plaintiffs, but includes additional names, like that of Brendan Paul, who's listed as Diddy's mule, who allegedly, quote, acquires and distributes Mr. Combs' drugs and guns. On Monday, Paul was reportedly arrested at the airport in Miami while trying to board Diddy's private jet. Florida officers were working with Homeland Security and Customs when they found drugs in his bag. These drugs were tested and the results led to his arrest. He was booked for cocaine and controlled substance possession.
So far, Brendan has only been arrested for possession of a controlled substance. And this is for the narcotics that they recovered, I believe, in one of his bags that was on the airplane where he was stopped in the Miami airport on Monday. So they haven't linked that to Puffy at all. As of now, it's just for the simple possession, which is still a felony. The question that I will have, and I'm curious to see what will happen, is that whether they're going to use those charges against Brendan to try to flip him, to try to get him to cooperate against any type of prosecution against Puffy or others.
All of this means Brendan Paul is facing felonies in Florida and could even face more charges in the future.
I mean, a felony, you can still do jail time. So it's still a serious matter. It's still a serious charge because you can do jail time having to deal with felony possession of narcotics. But just because he just got charged with those 2 counts, it doesn't mean that in the future he's not going to be charged with several other counts. It all depends where this investigation leads. But again, if I were Puffy, if I were anyone that were associated with Brendan Paul, I would be nervous because it's possible that he can't cooperate in order to avoid any jail time and actually sing on other people.
You talked about him flipping or working with prosecutors, investigators, and giving more details. What would all of that look like behind the scenes?
Well, it's something that we're not supposed to know about, but given that I used to be a prosecutor for 16 years, when it comes to cooperating, well, number one, he has to be willing to cooperate. And that's going to be a conversation between the prosecutors and his attorneys will talk to Brendan to see whether that's an avenue they want to take. I mean, personally, depending on how much exposure he has in terms of jail or how much exposure he has about pending other charges that can come about this entire investigation, it may be a question where he's like, it's not worth it for him to cooperate because he'll be scared of any backlash. He'll be scared of being blacklisted in the industry, and he'll just be scared in general that he'll be known as a person that cooperated against Puffy. But this is a conversation that he needs to have with his attorney, and also for the prosecutors to determine whether they're even willing to offer any type of cooperation deal to Mr. Paul.
Here's what we know about Brendan Paul so far. He's 25 years old and from Ohio. He played guard for Syracuse University's basketball team for 2 years before transferring to Fairmont State University. According to a post on his Facebook, he started making beats on his laptop during the pandemic, which kickstarted his work in the music industry. Eventually, he found Diddy and worked on Diddy's Love album, Off the Grid, that was released last fall. Since his arrest a few days ago, Paul has been released on $2,500 bail. The rest of what we know about Paul comes from Lil Rod's February lawsuit that described him as a direct report of Diddy's chief of staff. That's Christina Quorum, who's also listed as a plaintiff in the lawsuit. As this so-called direct report, Paul would allegedly, quote, be responsible for ensuring payment for sex workers in cash. He also allegedly, quote, directly committed and perpetrated violations of Chapter 77 by aiding, abetting, and inducing the sex trafficking venture and sex trafficking of Plaintiff Jones. So Plaintiff Jones is Lil Rod, who alleges Diddy sexually assaulted him and forced him to have sex with prostitutes. Lil Rod's lawsuit goes on to state that Diddy's associates, including Brendan Paul, would allegedly recruit, entice, coerce, harbor, transport, obtain, and provide Mr. Jones, as well as others, into commercial sex acts through means of force, threats of force, fraud, abuse of process, and coercion.
I'm sure that those people that are named in that lawsuit are very nervous right now, very nervous, even more nervous now after the execution of that search warrant, but also nervous because he revealed about these secret recordings, and they're wondering whether they could have been secretly recorded. Are there recordings of them engaging in these type of activities? Because even though it may not be criminal, some of those activities, it still does tarnish their image. So they can still take a toll in terms of their branding. But in terms of the lawsuit itself, it's very damaging. You got to think that several companies have already distanced themselves from Puffy, and there haven't been any criminal charges. All you see is a civil lawsuit. So I think there's still going to be more things that are going to come about as a result of that civil lawsuit. But I think the most damaging, again, is Cassie's lawsuit, but more importantly, I think is Little Rod's lawsuit that was filed.
And in the civil lawsuit, Lil Rod specifically, that Brendan Paul is listed almost 20 times. It's alleged that he's a drug mule. So he's getting different kinds of drugs for P. Diddy. He's also procuring prostitutes or sex workers. So if this is eventually investigated and prosecutors determine that there's enough to charge him, what sort of charges would he face?
Well, what you can see from the civil lawsuit, that it's possible that Little Rod would be serving as a witness in any criminal prosecution having to deal with Brendan Paul and him being a drug mule. And where you're talking about him being a drug mule, he is facing significant jail time. First off, anything over a day or 2 days or even a month for someone who's never been arrested is significant jail time. But I see Little Rod being one of the main witnesses if Brendan Paul were to be arrested for drug trafficking, because he's saying that he has direct knowledge and photographs that he can authenticate of Brendan Paul being in possession of narcotics in these parties or these gatherings that Puffy was having.
To be very clear, Brendan Paul doesn't face those criminal charges, only the controlled substance charges out of Florida. Let's pause this video just for a second to thank Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring it. I mean, I think it's pretty clear from the body cameras we cover, it's not always safe out there. And when you're hurt, it can be pretty confusing and even scary if you don't know where to turn. Well, Morgan & Morgan is the largest injury law firm in America, and at a time you already have a lot to think about, they make it super easy for you. They have completely modernized the process because you submit your claim, sign contracts, upload documents, and talk to your whole legal team all on your phone. That's it. An attorney will review your case in just 8 clicks. Also, they have 4,000 support staff that can help you too, which is amazing. Amazing to think about. And in terms of price, well, you only pay them
avoid him at all costs. Yes, I danced for him and I kept my space. I was on Vote or Die airplane and kept my space. I interviewed him for his project, kept my space. Nothing has happened is surprising. Ladies, keep space. To heal and move on is key. Gathering to incriminate is goals. But in this wild world with a broke ass system, our healing is priority. Shame on all those men that let this continue. Shame on me for prioritizing my mental health, some would say. But after working in a place that snatches souls, minds intact, and of the light, I save myself. Now, if someone needs me to pile on my story, give me a call. But I think Cassie got it. What the fuck is this? Holy shit, man. It just doesn't stop. It's thing after thing after thing after thing. Somebody say, y'all call Kanye crazy, but he ain't never in these court documents. JT wants to let y'all know she don't do coke. Carisha's so silent. So first of all, I was in a halfway house being drug tested every night when I went in. I explained this years ago. I never did cocaine, never will. It actually destroyed my family. Y'all get on here and make jokes about shit for shits and giggles and don't know people post-trauma or past trauma. Y'all playing with me or stop playing with me, please. Holy shit. We play
deniability with Homeland.
Okay. Akbar wants to know why nobody cares about Diddy's kids. I don't know what Diddy did or what he didn't do. But what I found more disturbing is how the black community is the only community that had his throat, not sparing his kids or nothing. Nobody's even trying to spare his motherfucking daughters on the internet. That's the fucked up part. Them babies. Once again, I don't know what's true, what's not, but this has always proved my point. When I say the only skin color that will publicly go against each other is black people, we don't stick together at all. Now, I'm not saying stick together with BS, but them kids are innocent and y'all get the thrill of laughing, joking about somebody else's pain. But what I find more disturbing is that you never catch them Caucasian going against each other on the internet. They gonna stand and stick together or don't open their mouth at all. Y'all may hate this messenger, but yeah, I know what I'm saying is true. His daughter's in school and I have a daughter. I don't wish that pain on nobody because kids are cruel sometimes. Let's start to do what the fuck? Huh. Okay. All right, people. All right. Let me make sure I definitely address all the things I need to address about this. This is like, okay. Now I'm hearing there's some Meek Mill snippet. What the fuck is... Yo, Meek, this is the time you need to be quiet, bro. Please.
Nigga, I hope they forgive me for what I did with Diddy. Real street nigga forever. Bitch, I'm the king of Philly. Carl Rice all Dream chasers, nigga. I hope they forgive me for what I did with Diddy. Real street nigga forever. Bitch,
wait, what?
I'm the king of Philly. Dream chasers, nigga. I hope they forgive me for what I did with Diddy. Real street nigga forever. Bitch, I'm the king of Philly.
This gotta be a splice track or like some type of deep fake. Like, I know it Meek, like, Meek is dumb, but like, come on. Meek, come the fuck on, bro. Come on, my nigga. All right. Let me make sure I definitely address all the things I need to address about this. This is like, okay. Now I'm hearing there's some Meek Mill snippet. What the fuck is... Yo, Meek, this is the time you need to be quiet, bro. Please.
Nigga, I hope they forgive me for what I did with Diddy. Real street nigga forever. Bitch, I'm the king of Philly. Carl Rice all Dream chasers, nigga. I hope they forgive me for what I did with Diddy. Real street nigga forever. Bitch,
wait, what?
I'm the king of Philly. Dream chasers, nigga. I hope they forgive me for what I did with Diddy. Real street nigga forever. Bitch, I'm the king of Philly.
It's gotta be a splice track or like some type of deep fake. Like, I know it Meek, like, Meek is dumb, but like, come on. Meek, come the fuck on, bro. Come on, my nigga. Is this a real snippet?
Dream chasers, nigga. I hope they forgive me for what I did with Diddy.
I hope they forgive me for what I did with Diddy.
Real street nigga forever. Bitch, I'm the king of Philly. Dream chasers, nigga. I hope they forgive me for what I did with Diddy. Real street nigga forever. Bitch, I'm the king of Philly.
Nah, this gotta be AI. I'm not believing it. It gotta be AI. Regardless, Meek Mill's silence on this, but his loudness with everything else kind of tells you, I'm not saying he's guilty of anything, but these guys, they were just as silent when all the alleged abuse was going on. And, you know, I'm hoping that this is false for everyone's sake, and even definitely Diddy's. But if it does come out that Diddy was actually doing all this crazy shit, like, we are gonna have to start blaming some of these silent enablers, right? Y'all been to these parties, y'all have heard these rumors, y'all have heard about alleged victims, and y'all did nothing. And even when the accusations came around, y'all kept quiet. And if you were around him or, you know, involved in any of these scenarios, even if you weren't a culprit yourself, you enabled this type of bullshit. So, like, so some of these people who are quiet, I know they want to kept out of the mess, but nah, some of y'all was enabling this bullshit. Some of y'all was being used by Diddy to normalize this bullshit, right? Like, think about the Lil Rod lawsuit. Not saying this is true, but what he alleged was that Diddy would say, yo, you know, I do this with these other niggas too. Like, we do these things, so why can't I do it with you? So again, I do think some of these rappers or whoever, Homeland Security officer reportedly said Diddy's raid was based off concrete allegations collected from victims. When charges come down, we will get him wherever he is. What the fuck? In a statement to New York Post, an officer with the Department of Homeland Security says, we believe that there's a disturbing history of sex trafficking. The officer went on to say, we are responding to concrete, detailed, explicit allegations. This is not random. We did not choose his name out of a hat. I don't know, this statement seems a little funny. Like, why would a Homeland Security officer talk to the New York Post? Even anonymous, like, why would they be this in depth? Like, you don't got to convince somebody. Their PR is not going to give a PR statement about them investigating Diddy. They might do a press conference when he gets arrested, if he does, but why they give him so much detail? Anyway, it's not random. Like, they feel like they're validating themselves. We didn't choose his name out of a hat. We had allegations that were followed up on. Feds collect the number of okay.
Ain't true.
Let's say we go to the post itself and find this. Okay, federal officials. I guess. Let me see. Pause on this site. Here we go. Federal officials were acting on specific allegations of sexual trafficking when they raided two of Diddy's homes on Monday, and they say the alleged victims have been not holding back during interviews. An officer with the Department of Homeland Security told the Post